You might see a Ford F-150 driving down the road and you know it's the best-selling vehicle in North America, but you might not know the story of how it accidentally became Ford's best-selling vehicle. See, when Ford first started out, they wanted to keep things simple with the Model T. They had the modern assembly line with streamlined assembly process. The Ford Flathead was the first affordable V8, and I think before World War I and World War II, Ford's history really changed a lot after the war, because when General Motors had all these different brands, Ford had to find a unique way to compete with Chevy and Dodge and Chrysler, because Chevy had all these different great V8 engines from all these different companies. And when the Ford Edsel didn't succeed, they took the Ford Edsel engines and the Mercury Edsel Lincoln engines, and they focused more on manufacturing different engines for different purposes. So they sort of played a little cat and mouse game with Dodge and Chevy. So Dodge came out with the Hemi, which changed NASCAR forever, and NASCAR after World War II, when manufacturing really went towards production of vehicles for regular people, and instead of producing, military planes and vehicles for war purposes, the competition between what's known as the Big Three became a lot more intense, because one company would do one thing and then the other company was forced to sort of react and respond. So Chevy came out with their small block, and then Ford had to quickly switch their Y block because all the General Motors blocks had bigger displacements and they could be increased. So they quickly had to switch to the FE engines, which is known as the Ford Edsel engines. And then as the government regulations became more strict, the three big companies did a couple different things. So Ford just lowered the compression ratio and just lowered the horsepower. Chevy already had much lighter engines, and it was a little easier to get the fuel economy standards by just using the corporate engines across the board. And then Dodge took a unique approach similar to Chevy, where they just made a six-cylinder version of their same V8 engine. They took the V8 Magnum engine and they either took two cylinders off or even added two cylinders for a V10. This was a technique that eventually Ford would also use, as they came out with their modular engines in the 90s and the 2000s, which they had a 4.0 SOHC V6, they had a 4.6 SOHC V8, and then they even had a 6.8 liter SOHC V10. So basically, all the different companies sort of streamlined their manufacturing process. In Chrysler, their answer was to build single overhead cam V6s and keep the Hemi, where Chevy decided to stay old school and make the small block for all their different